That answer does not follow the recovery protocol, Olivia Bennett said, closing Ethan Cole's interview file before he had finished explaining the route map. Ethan remained seated for 1 second longer, broad shoulders squared beneath a clean navy work jacket, one hand resting beside his cracked transit pass. On the wall display behind Olivia, a red route line broke at the same transfer point 3 times, each interruption exactly 7 minutes long. The protocol is part of the problem, Ethan said. The handoff is not failing where your scorecard says it is. Olivia's gray-green eyes narrowed. At 38, she had built Bennett Freight systems around repeatable standards, fast decisions, and measurable accountability. The company now faced rising missed deliveries during the worst Minneapolis winter in years, and a municipal contract supporting several regional hubs was already under review. She needed an operations recovery manager who could enter a damaged system without creating more uncertainty. Ethan had experience, but he had ignored the interview instructions, crossed out the approved route sequence, and replaced it with a hand-drawn transfer loop that no evaluator could score. You were asked to identify the weakest employee-controlled step, she said. There is no employee-controlled step causing this pattern. You cannot know that from a simulation. It is not behaving like a simulation. Olivia glanced toward the frozen image on the wall. Explain. Ethan looked at the clock instead. Noah's school dismissed in 52 minutes, and heavy snow had already slowed every bus route across the city. Ethan had promised his 11-year-old son that he would handle pickup himself. Noah had heard too many promises followed by last-minute messages and revised plans. Stable work mattered, but so did arriving when he said he would. The scanners are dropping 7 minutes after transfer, Ethan said. Not before. Not randomly. The same interval means the queue is holding data, then releasing it late. Why? I would need live timestamps. This exercise is designed to test reasoning. Show yours. Ethan felt the familiar pressure behind his ribs. He had spent years solving dispatch failures while other people demanded that he translate every instinct into a format they trusted. He knew how to read the silence between scans, how to see a delay forming before a dashboard admitted it existed. He also knew that explaining under suspicion made him sound defensive. If the system is live, he said, standing, you should stop scoring candidates and check the transfer point. Olivia stayed seated. The interview is not complete. It is for me. Mr. Cole, walking out confirms the concern in your evaluation. Ethan picked up his transit pass. Then your evaluation will be consistent. He left before she could answer. The elevator doors closed on Olivia's composed face, and Ethan immediately hated the satisfaction he felt. He had needed this job. The position offered regular hours, health coverage, and enough stability to stop building Noah's life around temporary shifts. Yet he had allowed pride to turn a correct observation into an unfinished argument. Outside, wind drove snow across the headquarters plaza in hard white sheets. Ethan checked the transit board, then his phone. Noah had sent a message with a photograph of the pickup calendar taped beside their apartment door. Under the school dismissal time, he had written one word in thick pencil, promise. Ethan typed, I am leaving now, then stopped himself from adding that everything would be fine. He put the phone away and started toward the station. Upstairs, Olivia reopened the interview exercise. Ethan's hand-drawn route did not match the expected answer, but the 7-minute gaps bothered her. The company's hiring filter had marked his response as non-compliant. The live operations screen, updating behind her, should not have known anything about his rejected answer. A new alert appeared. One transfer missed its handoff. Then another. Both scanners had reconnected after a cold interruption. Olivia compared the timestamps. 7 minutes. She reached for her steel travel mug, missed it, and left it standing beside the closed interview file. By the time she reached the lobby, Ethan was already halfway across the plaza, head lowered against the snow. Ethan. He did not turn. Olivia stepped into the wind and ran after the man she had rejected, while the red route line behind them broke at the same point again. Ethan, stop. Olivia's voice cut through the wind, but he kept walking until she stepped in front of him near the transit entrance. Snow clung to her chestnut hair and dark coat, and her breathing was unsteady from the run. Ethan glanced past her toward the departure board. I have a pickup deadline. Your 7-minute gap just repeated twice in live operations. That closed one question and opened another. Ethan looked at the phone in her hand. where a red route line broke at the same transfer point he had marked during the interview. Were both scanners reconnecting after cold interruption? He asked. Olivia checked the event details. Yes. Then the data did not disappear. It waited somewhere. Can you prove that? Not standing in a snowstorm. Come back upstairs. No, Olivia lowered the phone. You walked out of an interview for a job you clearly need. Ethan's jaw tightened. Needing work does not make my son's schedule optional. Noah's school pickup window was narrowing. The transit board showed another delay, and Ethan had already calculated the walking distance from the nearest functioning stop. If he missed the next train, he would arrive late again. Noah would not care that a billionaire CEO had chased him through the snow. He would remember only that his father had promised. Olivia followed Ethan's gaze to the cracked transit pass in his hand, then to the time on the board. She had expected wounded pride. What she saw was a man dividing every minute between a live system failure and an 11-year-old waiting at school. How much time do you have? She asked. 38 minutes. The station is delayed by 12. I can see that. I can arrange for you to start the diagnostic tomorrow. Ethan looked at her. I failed your interview. You failed the scoring model. The live system just repeated your answer. That does not mean your process suddenly respects me. His words were accurate, but his tone turned the conversation into another wall. Olivia opened the contract template on her phone. 30 days. Paid. Diagnostic authority only. You identify the cause and document the recovery path. No promise of permanent employment. Fixed hours. Operational failures do not keep fixed hours. My custody schedule does. Then we write protected pickup windows. Ethan shook his head. Not verbal. Written. No last-minute changes routed through an assistant. No evening calls during my time with Noah unless the system is actively failing. The demand protected a real boundary, but his rigid delivery cost them time. Olivia could have rejected the terms, returned to headquarters, and used the internal team already blaming worker compliance. Instead, she made a decision that placed her own judgment at risk. She added the schedule protection to the contract and sent it through the company's ordinary approval process, knowing that hiring a rejected candidate under urgent conditions would be questioned if he failed. She also delayed the internal recovery plan until he could examine the live data the next morning. That choice preserved the possibility of a better diagnosis, but it allowed another operating cycle to continue without correction. You start at 7, she said. The regional hub will give you controlled access. I will preserve the current logs and stop anyone from rewriting the event sequence. Ethan studied the screen. And if I find worker error? Then we document worker error. If I find system failure? Then we correct the system. Even if your hiring filter made the same assumption? Olivia held his gaze. Especially then. His phone vibrated. Noah had sent another message. Are you still coming yourself? Ethan answered immediately. Yes, I am on my way. He did not add an excuse or a guarantee about the weather. Olivia noticed. Ethan noticed that she waited until he finished before speaking again. The next train will not get you there on time, she said. The east route is still moving if you walk 2 blocks. Ethan checked the transit map and saw that she was right. His refusal to stop earlier had already cost him the faster connection. He turned toward the alternate entrance. Send the written terms before 6 tonight. I will. Then I will be at the hub tomorrow. Olivia stepped aside. They had not repaired the insult of the interview, and they had not established trust. They had done something smaller and more useful. She had recognized a limit she could not command away, and he had accepted work without surrendering the promise he had made to his son. Ethan hurried into the snow toward the east route. Olivia remained in the plaza, watching the live red line break again on her phone. By morning, they would have 30 days to find out whether one rejected answer could save a failing network without costing Ethan the one relationship he could not afford to mismanage. Freeze transfer segment C for 12 minutes. Ethan said the next morning, pointing to the live routing board before anyone had finished introducing themselves. The regional freight hub was already running behind, its loading lanes narrowed by packed snow and frozen wind pushing through every opening in the dock doors. Olivia stood beside him in a dark wool coat, steel travel mug in one hand, watching the red route line pulse across the screen. You do not have authority to freeze anything, she said. Then authorize it. You have been here 23 minutes. And the 7-minute gaps are repeating after every reconnect on that segment. Olivia studied the board. Pausing the route would delay municipal deliveries already under contract review, and every missed window would be counted against her company. Leaving it active might preserve service while destroying the clean data Ethan needed. He had been hired to diagnose, not command. She had brought him in because the existing process had failed, not because she intended to surrender control. "Show me why segment C," she said. Ethan opened 3 timestamp views and aligned them by hand. The scan disappears here, but the physical transfer continues. 7 minutes later, the record appears at the next point as if the worker scanned late. The compliance model says workers are batching scans. The compliance model is measuring the symptom. That is not proof. No, it is the reason to test. Olivia looked toward the live service clock, then authorized a 12-minute pause on segment C. The decision protected one route long enough to isolate the transfer sequence, but it pushed 2 scheduled loads outside their preferred window and added pressure to the municipal contract. 12 minutes, she said. Not 13. Ethan moved to the dispatch station and began matching transfer times against scanner reconnects. His skill was obvious in the speed with which he separated useful events from noise. He saw patterns in the gaps that the dashboard flattened into averages. Olivia contributed what he lacked: access to synchronized hub data, authority to preserve the current logs, and the ability to keep operations moving around the test instead of stopping the entire floor. They worked from opposite sides of the same problem, each necessary, neither comfortable with it. Ethan asked for worker observations and clipped questions and rejected vague answers before people could finish. Exact time. Which device? Before or after reconnect? His precision improved the map, but his tone changed the room. By the second hour, fewer people volunteered anything beyond what he directly requested. One worker who had started to mention a recurring cold start delay stopped when Ethan interrupted to correct the route number. Ethan did not notice the silence he created. Olivia did. "You are losing information," she said quietly. "I am removing speculation. You are teaching them that speaking is a risk. We do not have time for stories. Then you may miss the fact hidden inside one." Her criticism landed close enough to truth that Ethan became more rigid. Standardized listening did not catch this. Neither will controlling every sentence. Olivia's own flaw sharpened the conflict. She still believed the right process, applied quickly, could produce fairness. She asked the hub to follow a structured observation form before the pause ended, assuming the format would restore order. Instead, several responses arrived incomplete because workers were trying to describe events that did not fit the categories. Her filter reduced confusion and erased nuance at the same time. During the final minute of the pause, Ethan saw the first usable clue. 3 scanners had reconnected after cold interruption. Each showed normal battery status. Each completed the physical transfer. Yet the corresponding records vanished for exactly 7 minutes before appearing in sequence. He marked the times without naming a cause. Olivia leaned closer to compare the live board with his handwritten notes. A loose page shifted under his hand. She caught it before it slid beneath the console and placed it beside his cracked transit pass. Neither commented on the gesture. "The failures cluster after reconnect events," she said. "Yes. Can you reproduce it?" "Not here without contaminating live operations." Olivia looked at the delayed route clock, then at the contract warning on her screen. "I will approve a controlled pilot in the test yard. Cold conditions, live timing, matched routes. And no network-wide shutdown until we know more." Ethan nodded, though he disliked the limit. Olivia extended the selective hold and accepted another day of service delays. The decision gave them a clean next step, but increased operational losses and scrutiny around her judgment. Ethan had found a pattern. Olivia had created the conditions to test it. Between them, the first clue was finally clear. The workers were being blamed for 7 minutes the system itself might be hiding. At the end of the first week, Ethan returned to the apartment after another snow-delayed shift and found Noah waiting beneath the pickup calendar. "You changed pickup with a text," Noah said before Ethan had taken off his snow-covered boots. The apartment was warm enough to fog the windows, but the calendar beside the door still carried the morning plan in Ethan's handwriting. "Pickup, 4 o'clock." Noah stood beneath it with his backpack on, coat unzipped, and the expression of an 11-year-old who had spent an hour deciding whether he was more angry or embarrassed. "The hub delay changed everything," Ethan said. I sent you the new plan as soon as I knew. You sent instructions. The message told you what to do. That is the problem. Ethan set his cracked transit pass on the kitchen counter and checked the time. Olivia had scheduled a call about the controlled pilot in 6 minutes. The test yard had only one cold weather window available before the municipal contract review, and the temperature was expected to rise after the weekend. If they missed the window, the scanners might reconnect normally and the 7-minute gap could disappear. Noah pulled the pickup calendar from the wall. You said you would tell me directly if the plan changed. I did tell you. A text is not telling me. It is managing me. Ethan heard the difference, but pressure turned understanding into defense. I needed you to follow the plan without arguing. Noah dropped the calendar on the table. I am not one of your workers. Ethan's phone rang. Olivia's name appeared on the screen. He had demanded protected custody hours in writing, and the call had arrived inside them. The boundary mattered. He declined it without answering, then opened the message she sent immediately afterward. The test yard was available at 6:30 the next morning, and she needed confirmation within minutes. Work is done for tonight, he said. Noah looked at the phone still in his hand, then put it down. Ethan placed it face down, but his eyes kept returning to it. The clue from the hub was incomplete. 3 scanners had reconnected after cold interruptions, and each had hidden 7 minutes of activity. The pattern suggested that data was waiting inside the system, but they had not yet shown where or why. A controlled pilot could separate the device behavior from worker timing. Missing it could leave employees blamed for another week. I need 10 minutes to confirm tomorrow, Ethan said. You always need 10 minutes. The words were quiet, which made them harder to dismiss. Ethan opened the pilot schedule anyway. He moved the planned pickup time by 45 minutes and sent Noah the change while they were standing in the same room. It protected the required test window and preserved the written schedule on paper. It also repeated the exact injury Noah had named. Noah read the message, looked at his father, and pushed the phone back across the table. Do not change pickup again without talking to me first. I just did. No, you changed it. You did not talk to me. Noah went to his room and closed the door. At Bennett headquarters, Olivia watched the confirmation arrive and approved the pilot. She kept the network running rather than ordering a broad shutdown, because the evidence still showed a cluster, not a proven system-wide cause. She also reserved matched scanners, synchronized route timing, and a limited test segment so the pilot could produce usable comparisons. The choice protected most deliveries and gave the investigation a realistic chance to isolate the failure. It also meant suspect handoffs would continue elsewhere during the test, increasing losses if her caution was wrong. Olivia tried Ethan once more, then stopped when the call went unanswered. She knew he had protected custody hours. She did not know that he had already broken the boundary inside his own home to preserve the pilot she had authorized. The next morning's test would begin before sunrise and run close to Noah's pickup deadline. If Ethan left early, the company could lose the only cold weather window available. If he stayed, his son would hear another promise become an instruction. On the kitchen table, the red route line on Ethan's screen broke again at the same transfer point while Noah's pickup calendar lay beside it, crossed through in pencil. During the second week, snow blew across the controlled test yard and gathered along the painted lane markers while 2 freight paths were set side by side under identical timing. One used devices exposed to the freezing air. The other used equipment kept above cold start temperature. Run the second route again, but leave one scanner warm, Ethan said. Olivia stood near the timing station in a dark coat, her steel travel mug untouched beside the synchronized displays. We have already delayed 3 service windows, she said. If we extend the pilot, the municipal review will see another missed cycle. If we stop now, we will confirm only that reconnect events are involved. That is more than we knew last week. It is not enough to change the system. Ethan checked the route clocks. The first paired run had produced the familiar 7-minute scan gap, but only on the lane where the scanner had restarted after sitting in the cold. The warm device had transferred every record immediately. That result weakened the theory that dispatch timing alone caused the failures, but it did not explain why the delayed records later appeared in the correct order. Olivia looked toward the live network dashboard. She had kept most operations running while holding selected routes, believing a controlled pilot would prevent another premature decision. Every additional hour increased losses and gave internal teams more reason to defend the existing compliance model. One more run, she said. Matched loads, matched timing, one cold restart, one normal reconnect. The authorization could not be taken back. Once the next service window was surrendered, the company would absorb the delay whether the test succeeded or failed. Ethan reset the route sequence while Olivia preserved the device logs and aligned the dispatch timestamps. He moved quickly, but no longer interrupted every observation. When an operator pointed out that the cold scanner briefly displayed an empty transfer queue after reconnecting, Ethan asked the operator to repeat the exact sequence. The change was small, and Olivia noticed it. The second run began. Both routes reached the transfer point together. The warm scanner recorded the handoff immediately. The cold scanner reconnected, showed no pending items, and allowed the physical freight transfer to continue. 7 minutes later, every missing scan appeared at once. Ethan stared at the queue display, then opened the system timing view. The records were never lost. Olivia stepped closer. They were waiting, not in the route layer. He traced the reset sequence with one finger. The scanner reconnects. The queue rule clears the visible pending count, but the buffered records remain locked until the next timed release. The 7-minute gap no longer meant workers had delayed scanning. It did not even mean the routing engine had failed broadly, as Ethan had first assumed. The old clue had changed meaning. The break in the red route line was the shadow of a queue reset rule triggered only when devices reconnected from a cold start. Your interview answer blamed the transfer architecture, Olivia said. Because I saw the pattern and stopped at the first explanation that fit. Ethan kept his eyes on the display. I was right that worker compliance was not the cause. I was wrong to treat my first theory as complete. Then I refused to explain enough for anyone to test it. Olivia looked at the paired routes, one clean and one delayed. I ended the interview because your answer did not fit the scoring model. I treated non-compliance with the format as evidence that your reasoning was unreliable. And now the format is part of the evidence against our judgment. She extended the pilot beyond the original route segment and ordered sequence-level testing across the network's cold start conditions. The decision changed the entire strategy. They would no longer search for a general dispatch failure or correct worker behavior. They would test one specific queue reset mechanism, route by route, under controlled reconnection conditions. The cost was immediate. More held shipments, more empty windows, and more scrutiny attached to Olivia's name. Ethan accepted a cost of his own. He submitted a written correction to his diagnostic report, removing his broad routing hypothesis and documenting where his earlier reasoning had outrun the evidence. The admission weakened the image of effortless competence he had tried to protect, but it made the next phase usable. When the final route line appeared, it broke at 7 minutes exactly where the cold scanner had reset. This time, neither of them saw a worker failure. They saw a system rule hiding completed work. Olivia picked up her steel mug, found the coffee cold, and set it back down. Ethan looked at the time, then at Noah's pickup reminder. I need to leave when the next run ends, he said. Olivia nodded. Then we designed the test so your departure is part of the plan, not a disruption. Practical respect became trust, not because either had been proven flawless, but because both had changed what they were willing to admit. The failed interview answer had not become a secret triumph. It had become a useful clue only after Ethan corrected it, and Olivia stopped mistaking standardized judgment for truth. By the third week, the controlled testing moved back into the active regional hub, where every repeated run carried a service cost. Stop the paired test and restart both routes from zero, Ethan said, taking the timing tablet from the operations table before the team had finished reporting the first result. The hub was louder than the test yard, crowded with moving freight, warning tones, and winter air spilling through the loading doors. Ethan had spent 3 days pushing for network-level confirmation of the cold start queue reset, but every repeated run delayed live departures. We already captured the 7-minute gap, Olivia said. We captured it once under these conditions. Then let the team finish documenting it. Ethan looked toward the route clock. Noah's pickup window began in 50 minutes. A snow advisory had slowed transit again, but the next run could confirm whether the queue rule behaved the same way inside the active hub. If Ethan left, the test would proceed without the person who had designed it. If he stayed, He would break the boundary Noah had already forced him to name. Reset both scanners, Ethan said. Match timing. No changes. No one moved immediately. During the first week, workers had offered observations until Ethan interrupted, corrected, or reduced their answers to numbers. Now they waited for formal instructions and gave nothing extra. One operator glanced at a cold device, then looked away. Ethan noticed the hesitation and mistook it for resistance. "We do not have time for uncertainty," he said. Olivia stepped between him and the control station. "You are creating it. The system needs another run. The system also needs people willing to tell us what they see." Ethan lowered his voice. "They have the procedure. They stopped volunteering because you punish anything that does not arrive in your preferred format." The words cost him time because they were true. He returned the tablet to the table. "Run the test," he said to the team. "Report only confirmed observations." The instructions sounded cleaner. It also closed the door again. Olivia made her own decision. She allowed the paired run to continue, preserving the chance to confirm the seeded mechanism while accepting another missed service window. She did not blame hub staff for the delay. When the municipal contract team requested an explanation, she put her name on the decision and stated that the extended test had been authorized by her office. The consequence was immediate. Another route lost priority, operating losses increased, and the pressure to shut down the entire network grew. The cold scanner reconnected. The warm route transferred normally. The cold route showed an empty visible queue, then released the missing records 7 minutes later. The result matched the existing clue and midpoint mechanism. It strengthened the pattern, but it did not yet prove network-wide causation. Ethan checked the time. He could still reach Noah if he left immediately. Then an internal operations call demanded a written interpretation before the next route cycle. Ethan chose the report. He told himself that 10 minutes would protect the work, the contract, and possibly his future job. He sent Noah a message changing pickup again. No explanation, only a new time and location. Noah replied before Ethan finished the first paragraph. "I said talk to me first." Ethan called. Noah declined it. Ethan called again. The phone went silent. At the hub, a worker finally mentioned that the cold scanner had displayed a brief blank status before the reset. Ethan interrupted to ask for the exact second. The worker answered, then stepped back and offered nothing else. Olivia closed the timing tablet. "You are done directing the team." Ethan stared at her. "We are one step from clean corroboration, and you are making the next step less reliable. You hired me to diagnose the system. I hired you to help people recover it." Olivia reassigned the test instructions to the existing process and limited Ethan to analysis and written recommendations. He could still examine the synchronized logs and compare timestamps, but he could no longer control the floor unless he changed how he worked. The restriction protected the team and cost them speed. It also placed the proof at risk because Ethan's best skill depended on real-time observation. He looked toward the red route line, then at Noah's unanswered call. His competence had identified the mechanism. His control had damaged the cooperation needed to prove it. "The delay decision was mine," Olivia said. "The morale damage is not theirs to carry, and neither is my earlier rejection of you. But this part is yours." Ethan removed his access badge from the control lanyard and placed it beside Olivia's untouched steel mug. By the time he reached the apartment, Noah was already inside, the pickup calendar torn from the wall and folded on the table. "I followed the new plan," Noah said without looking at him. "That does not mean I trust the next one." Ethan had no defense that would not repeat the injury. The network was still failing, the workers no longer trusted his direction, and his son had stopped trusting his promises. He had been right about the queue reset, but being right had not kept him from becoming the obstacle. During the 4th week, Olivia brought Ethan back to the controlled test yard under a different condition. "You will not direct the floor today," she said, placing Ethan's access badge beside her steel travel mug. Snow moved sideways across the paired lanes, widening the edges of 2 identical route markers. Ethan looked at the badge, then at the synchronized timing screens. "Then why am I here?" "To analyze, listen, and document. The team will describe what they observe before you interpret it." The restriction still stung, but he had earned it. Without direct control, Ethan could not adjust the test the instant he saw a problem. Olivia would have to approve every change, and each delay increased the losses already tied to held shipments. She gathered the team at a practical distance from the scanners and changed the process she had relied on since the investigation began. Instead of forcing observations into a standardized form first, she asked for the sequence in each person's own words, then recorded exact times afterward. Ethan stood at the edge of the table with his notebook closed. When one operator described a blank queue appearing for less than a second after cold reconnection, Ethan opened his mouth to demand the timestamp. He stopped himself. "What happened next?" he asked. The operator finished the full account. Only then did Ethan compare it with the existing logs. The brief blank status appeared before every delayed release, but not on the warm route. It supported the cold start mechanism they had already seeded without yet proving that the queue reset rule caused the network failures. Olivia authorized 2 paired runs under identical loads and timing. One scanner remained warm. The other stayed outside long enough to require a cold restart. She kept the broader network operating while the test continued, delaying a full shutdown until the paired results could separate device behavior from dispatch timing. "That choice has already increased losses," she told Ethan as the first route entered position. "I ended your interview early because the filter called your reasoning non-compliant. Then I delayed wider action because I wanted confirmation strong enough to survive review. The first decision discarded useful judgment. The second allowed more failures while we tested." Ethan watched the cold scanner reconnect. "What changes after this?" "The hiring score will no longer end a technical review by itself. Safety and recovery concerns will require a second evaluation outside the original scoring chain. Operational holds will also require written reasons for continuing or ending them, including the cost of waiting." She did not soften the consequence. "I will put my decisions and the losses attached to them into the final record." The warm route completed its handoff immediately. The cold route showed an empty visible queue. 7 minutes later, the missing scans appeared together. Ethan wrote the times without reaching for the controls. "I thought being competent meant people should follow once I saw the pattern," he said. "When they did not, I became more controlling. I interrupted workers, reduced their observations to numbers, and made them stop offering information. I did the same thing to Noah. I changed pickup plans and called that communication because the instructions were clear to me." Olivia looked toward him, but did not rescue the admission with reassurance. "What will you do differently in the final review?" "State the reasoning before the conclusion. Separate what I observed from what I assumed. Put my broad routing theory and my corrected queue reset finding in the same record." His phone vibrated. Noah had sent a photograph of the folded pickup calendar lying on the apartment table. There was no message. Ethan did not reply with a promise. He wrote, "I will be home at the time already marked. We can talk when you are ready." Noah did not answer. The second paired run produced the same result. Immediate transfer on the warm route, a blank queue after cold reconnection, then a 7-minute delayed release. Olivia preserved the synchronized device logs and dispatch timestamps. The pattern was now corroborated under match conditions, but internal operations and information technology teams could still argue whether the queue reset rule caused the delay or merely appeared beside it. They would need the complete chain at the Week 5 review. Ethan closed his notebook. No conclusion without the full sequence. Olivia picked up the steel mug, but left his badge on the table. And no full sequence built by silencing the people inside it. They agreed to enter the final review under one costly rule. Every observation, correction, delay, and leadership failure would remain in the record, even if it weakened Ethan's vindication, exposed Olivia's judgment, or prolonged the operational losses. At the Week 5 review, Olivia stood at the end of the table while Ethan waited to her left beside the synchronized device logs, dispatch timestamps, and paired route test results. "The original question was why a rejected candidate saw the failure before our system did," she said. "The answer is not that Ethan Cole was secretly infallible. The answer is that our process dismissed a useful observation because it arrived outside the format we trusted." Across the table, operations and information technology leaders had arranged their own analysis. No one disputed that 7-minute scan gaps existed. The remaining dispute was whether the queue reset rule caused those failures or merely appeared near them. Olivia placed the first route map on the center screen. The clue appeared during Ethan's interview. Repeated handoffs vanished for exactly 7 minutes after transfer. The live network repeated the same pattern minutes later. She changed the display to the regional hub timeline. During the first diagnostic pause, physical freight continued moving while digital records disappeared after scanner reconnection. That separated the missed handoffs from worker compliance. An operations leader pointed toward the timestamps. It did not separate the scanner from dispatch congestion. Correct, Ethan said. He had once treated questions as resistance. Now he answered before defending his conclusion. My first explanation was too broad. I assumed a routing layer failure because the pattern resembled one. The controlled pilot disproved part of that theory. He placed his original diagnostic page beside the corrected version. The first blamed transfer architecture generally. The second identified cold start reconnection as the condition requiring further testing. I should have explained that distinction during the interview. I did not. Later, I interrupted operators and reduced their observations to the answers I expected. That delayed the cleanest clue. The visible queue briefly reset to empty before the records were released. Olivia displayed the paired route results. 2 routes had carried matched loads under identical timing. One scanner remained warm. The other restarted after cold exposure. The warm route recorded every handoff immediately. The cold route showed an empty queue, then released the missing scans 7 minutes later. The result repeated twice under the revised process that allowed operators to describe the complete sequence before Ethan interpreted it. That was corroboration, Olivia said. It confirmed the condition and the timing, but not yet the exact cause. An information technology leader moved one device log forward. The reconnect rule is designed to prevent duplicate transmissions. It could be holding records correctly while another delay occurs downstream. Ethan nodded. That was possible until we synchronized the device logs with dispatch timestamps from both routes. He aligned 3 columns on the screen. The cold scanner reconnected at the first timestamp. The queue reset rule activated at the second. The local display cleared its visible pending count, but the buffered records remained locked. No downstream congestion appeared during that interval. At exactly 7 minutes, the timed release opened and sent every stored scan in sequence. The warm scanner never activated the cold start reset and never produced the gap. Ethan changed to the live hub comparison. The same sequence appeared in every disputed handoff they had traced. Cold reconnect, visible queue reset, locked buffer, 7-minute timed release. Worker scan times matched the physical transfers. The records had been delayed by the system after the work was completed. The queue reset rule caused the failures, Ethan said. The workers did not batch scans. They did not ignore handoff procedure. The dashboard assigned system delay to human behavior because it measured when records arrived, not when the work occurred. The complete chain answered why Olivia had run after him. Ethan's rejected interview answer had identified the pattern before the company recognized it, but his refusal to explain had made the insight difficult to evaluate. Olivia's standardized filter had mistaken non-compliant presentation for weak reasoning. Both failures mattered. Olivia signed the final operational finding. She cleared the affected workers of the compliance findings tied to the 7-minute gaps and authorized replacement of the cold start queue rule with a safeguarded reconnect process. Until the change passed controlled validation, devices exposed to cold start conditions would require a documented manual buffer check before routes resumed. That safeguard added labor and slowed transfers, but it prevented hidden records from being blamed on workers. She then approved changes beyond the device rule. Technical hiring exercises could no longer be closed by one standardized score when a candidate identified a live operational risk. A second reviewer outside the original scoring chain would examine the reasoning, including answers that challenged the expected assumption. Recovery holds would require written explanations for both action and delay, with service costs recorded besides safety and reliability risks. Diagnostic contractors would receive access only through defined authority, and no consultant could direct operational teams without a communication plan and local process oversight. Ethan made his own decisive choice. Olivia offered to restore his floor access for the remaining contract period. He declined immediate control and requested that the restriction remain until he completed the revised communication review. Removing the limit because the technical finding was correct would repeat the same mistake, he said. Competence in one area does not erase damage in another. The final record included his correct pattern recognition, his incomplete first theory, and the cooperation lost through his controlling behavior. It also included Olivia's early rejection, her costly decision to delay a network-wide shutdown until corroboration, and her responsibility for both the added losses and the stronger proof. No one in the room was humiliated. The old compliance model was not defended as malicious, it was shown to be incomplete. The company did not repair itself with a speech. It changed the rule, the review path, the hiring filter, and the authority structure that had turned 7 hidden minutes into months of misplaced blame. When the meeting ended, the red route line remained unbroken across the final test display. Ethan did not receive a permanent position that day. Olivia did not ask for gratitude. They left with a corrected system, a truthful record, and consequences neither of them was permitted to outrun. 2 months later, Ethan still checked the pickup calendar before he checked the freight dashboard. Every morning, he read the day aloud at the small kitchen table: school dismissal, transit time, his shift ending, and who would call if snow changed the plan. Noah listened while eating cereal, sometimes nodding, sometimes asking the same question twice. Ethan answered twice without turning the conversation into an instruction. When a winter delay threatened pickup, he called Noah directly before changing anything. He explained what had happened, offered the 2 realistic options, and waited for an answer. The first time, Noah chose the later pickup and remained suspicious until Ethan arrived. The second time, Ethan was already waiting when the school doors opened. Trust did not return with one apology. It returned in minutes kept, calls made, and plans that stayed where he had placed them. At Bennett Freight Systems, the new Reconnect safeguard slowed cold weather transfers, but the red route line no longer broke at the old 7-minute point. Devices exposed to freezing conditions required a manual buffer check until the replacement rule completed controlled validation. Workers logged what they saw in their own words before the information entered standardized categories. Ethan attended the reviews as a diagnostic contractor, not as the person commanding the room. He asked for observations, repeated them back, and separated facts from his interpretation. When he disagreed, he gave the reason before the conclusion. Some workers still watched him carefully. He did not demand that they forget how he had treated them. Olivia kept the changes inside the ordinary structure she had approved. The hiring filter required an independent second review for unconventional answers tied to live risk. Recovery holds documented both the cost of acting and the cost of waiting. Her decisions during the winter failure remained in the final record, including the rejected interview and the losses caused by delaying broader action. She attended early implementation meetings, but she did not control their findings. When a review criticized part of the new process, she accepted the correction instead of defending the policy because it carried her name. Ethan completed the communication review required before any return to direct operational authority. He passed only after several observed sessions, written feedback, and a final evaluation outside Olivia's control. A permanent non-executive operations position later opened through the company's normal hiring process. Ethan applied with the same documents as every other candidate. His technical work supported the application, but it did not guarantee the result. Olivia did not sit on the final panel. When he received the offer, the hours were stable, the authority limited, and the pickup protections written into the schedule. He accepted without asking for a larger title. The work gave him responsibility without pretending that one successful diagnosis had repaired every weakness. Noah studied the new schedule at the apartment table. What happens when there is an emergency? He asked. I call you before the plan changes. What if you cannot? Then I tell you who will call and why. I do not send an order and disappear. Noah looked at him for a long moment, then placed the cracked transit pass beside the calendar. He had taped the split down the middle, though the card no longer worked. Keep that, he said. So you remember the old route. Ethan did. Olivia visited the regional hub during posted review hours and never asked Ethan to stay beyond his protected schedule. Once, she wanted the team to adopt a faster digital reporting format. Ethan argued that it could repeat the same filtering problem under a cleaner design. They tested both methods for 2 weeks and kept a spoken observation step before digital entry. Another time, Ethan wanted to expand the safeguard across every route immediately. Olivia required the controlled validation to finish first. He disliked the delay, then acknowledged that urgency did not make his preferred answer complete. Their respect grew through these ordinary disagreements. On a gray Minneapolis morning, Olivia met Ethan outside the school pickup area after a scheduled hub review ended early. She held her steel travel mug with both hands and looked toward Noah, who was marking the completed pickup on the calendar page clipped inside Ethan's folder. "Would it be all right if I joined you for coffee?" she asked. Ethan did not answer for Noah. "We were going to the place near the apartment," he said. "No work discussion unless we all agree." Olivia looked toward Noah. "Does that work for you?" Noah shrugged with careful seriousness. "You can come. He still has to help me with science homework." "I will not interfere with the schedule," she said. Ethan smiled, not because the sentence promised a future, but because it respected the present. They walked together without touching, close enough for conversation and far enough for choice. Behind them, the hub display visible through the glass showed one steady red route line crossing the transfer point without braking. Noah drew a small check beside the pickup time. Ethan placed the repaired transit pass back in his pocket, and Olivia carried her cooling coffee into the quiet winter morning with them.